Hello, hello, and welcome to the Rock and Roll Podcast. I'm your host, John Harris, and today on Rock and Roll Podcast, we have RAPHAEL Weinroth-Browne. I am so sorry, sir. I just turned your last name into broth.
No worries.
Nobody wants soup on a hot day. RAPHAEL Weinroth-Browne. Has that ever happened to you before, by chance?
Usually people have butchered it more than that, but with the best intentions, as opposed to just mixing up the syllables.
Yeah.
So actually, that was just kind of a nice accident.
Cool. Beautiful. Yeah. All right. And he's got a new album called Worlds Within Live, which is released on July 2nd. Right now I'm being joined by RWB himself to share some more information about what he's got going on. And the cool thing, for those listening in, is February of 2020, episode 603. So if you go ahead and go to the rockandrollpodcast.ca, Spotify, YouTube, wherever it is that you're listening, if it is on YouTube, I don't remember, but check it out. Let me know in the comments below. Episode 603, we chatted about the album Worlds Within, and now this is a live version of the album.
Yep, that's right. So it's basically a kind of a re-exploration of the record. There was a lot of interest in Worlds Within when it came out. I was a bit surprised, to be honest, at how much people were interested in the record, because for me it was almost a sort of experimental project. And so when I released it, and a lot of people were enjoying it, and it seemed to gain momentum throughout the year. And then, of course, with the pandemic, I didn't get to tour the album. I only got to play a couple shows, do a few live streams. But I thought, it'd be really nice to kind of revisit this music by playing it live in real time, with the live looping, as opposed to the way it was recorded, which is multi-tracked, and to kind of get into it again that way and basically share that live rendition. It's sort of like a pre-recorded live stream in a way, but in high quality that you could watch as YouTube videos, but also listen to as an album. And then that idea seems to have kind of developed. So originally it was just going to be videos, and then it was just going to be videos and digital album and streaming, and now there's a CD, and I'll probably do vinyl as well. So it's kind of blossomed into something much bigger than I expected, which is awesome. So,
Are you doing this all on your own, or do you have label support?
Oh, I don't have a label. I've done everything on my own. I work with, obviously, with Earsplit PR, who connected us for this interview. But apart from the publicity, shout out to Earsplit.
Liz? Yeah. Liz connected us, I believe.
That's right. Yeah.
Liz,
so I've been working with, so that's been super helpful for the promotion of the videos and the record. But apart from that, I'm working with a couple of people here in town that do all of my sort of production stuff for audio and video, and basically everybody who's worked on the record, who's helped me in any capacity with the recording or the video or the visuals, is from the Ottawa area, which is super cool. So it's very homegrown. But it's like a one-man operation. Apart from that, it's a big job, but it's been very rewarding, and I'm really glad that it's out and that people are liking it so far. So,
Well, they liked the first album, from what you were saying, or they liked Worlds Within. So, I guess, does it surprise you that people like this one?
Not too much, but at the same time, there's a bit more of a rawness to the live version, which makes it feel a little bit less like, I guess, a polished album. But also there are certain things about it that I think are better in a way. So there are certain aspects I think we were almost able to improve on. We were in a better space for the recording for the most part, and we used a better close mic on the cello. And I think those things played a role for sure. And I knew the material more. Like, I had kind of internalized it, because when I made the record, I had a concept of it, but I'd never performed it live, and I had no intention of playing it live either. And I was improvising my way through a lot of the parts too. So there are certain things that just sort of came out that ended up on the album, whereas when I did the live version, I had kind of relearned those things, and I'd figured out, what worked and what didn't in a live setting. And I kind of had a deeper understanding of the thematic concepts of the music and sort of what it meant to me and the sound worlds and everything. So I think I was able to bring this more informed perspective to the music this time. And I think there's certain parts that they have a bit more immediacy, they're a bit more dramatic. There's some arrangements that I changed a little bit for the sake of playing it live to make it possible with the loops and everything. And I think those parts, some of those modified sections actually are a little bit better. I think some of them I prefer. So there have been some. I don't really want to call it improvements. It's more of a companion record, but definitely it's just been nice to see also a good reception for this. It's a record that I kind of put together a bit more on the fly, whereas the original studio album was kind of just worked on until it was complete, and then I started telling people that it existed, and then I was very methodical with the promo, and I took a lot of time to like get it out to review sites and stuff like well in advance. I was very organized, and then this time around I was just kind of like flying by the seat of my pants a little bit, just trying stuff. So it's just reassuring that things are still working,
Mm-hmm. Do you ever open up your emails to people with cello?
I don't, but that's because I think I've probably gotten it from so many people already,
Yeah, exactly. And then there's one other cello joke, but it's inappropriate, so I won't say it.
I'm sure there's at least one.
At least one. Yeah, the one about how cellists play or something, and it's between their legs. Okay, cello microphones. Not that there's necessarily a cello microphone. There's a few different ways you could do it. I'd probably recommend a combination of a ribbon microphone and a bass response dynamic or a condenser of some kind. But you mentioned that it was a better setup. So I know in the video also as well, I saw you playing through an orange amp. So maybe for those, for those of us gearheads out there who were kind of wondering how you bring, because it's an acoustic cello, correct?
Yep. Yeah, 100% acoustic cello, but I'm using a pickup. So it's a removable pickup. And so the cello is being close mic'd for the acoustic sound. And I also have the pickup on simultaneously. And then I'm running that through a jack cable into the effects and then into the loop station. And then out of that, then it goes into the amp. But also for the live recording, what we did for certain things is we ran a DI and we captured the direct signals from the loop channels. I'm using a Boss RC300 loop station. So it's got 3 channels of looping, and then you can basically get like the left right from the looper, which proved to be useful in mixing. It's a complicated setup because you have all these different things happening all at once, and you're trying to get a good balance and blend of all of them. But one thing that I think is really, really cool that not a lot of people do, but that I like, is to blend the sound of an acoustic cello close mic'd with the sound of an amp. And I think most people, would use they would amplify themselves with like a DPA live, and then they would, run that through a PA system. But I like cello going through an amp. There's something about the way the sound breaks up a little bit, and the amp sort of has a life of its own. The pedals, like there's something a bit analog about it and a bit like unpredictable, where it's shaping the sound in its own way, in addition to what you're doing. And on top of that, also one thing that we did with the amp miking was that we close mic'd it the way you would normally, but then we also had 2 room mics on the amp instead of on the cello. So basically, we had them going out like a V from the cab.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like 3 feet away, 6 feet away.
Yeah, it's probably about 6 feet away. In a separate room. So where this was recorded, it was kind of like this barn in the woods, basically. And I'm on the top level, and then the amp is on the bottom level. It's on this like a concrete floor, so that we're able to get the separation of the tones.
Separation of the tones. That's the title of your next album. Separation of the tones. Sweet. Okay, now something else you mentioned was you were doing some live streams. Now, I've chatted with artists who hate it. I've chatted with artists who love it. Do you hate it? Do you love it?
At first I hated it. I kind of got dragged into it, as everyone I think did at the beginning of the pandemic. So my first experience of it wasn't good. But in general, I think I had a lot of feelings about live streaming prior to that made me feel a bit apprehensive and uncomfortable. Just the idea of like not really having the feedback of an audience and feeling like it's almost like you have to be playing like an album performance, because when people are behind a screen, I think that they're a bit more critical and they don't just sort of lose themselves in the energy of the concert setting or whatever. They're a little bit more critical, right? It's just the way it is. When you're behind a screen, you can kind of sit back and go, oh, I think they could have done that better. So I think that all those thoughts were getting to me. But then I started to do it more. What really changed the game for me was I did a sort of a longer show in July last year, and it was like a solo show. It was just my stuff. I played Worlds Within. I played some other solo material as well, and I had a really good response. And I could see people commenting, and I could chat with them on the stream. And I had set everything up properly with the audio at home. So I was able to really kind of control everything and, do the best I could and be comfortable. And then I really enjoyed it, and I did a couple more after that. And I'd like to keep doing it. Actually, I really like this format, and so now I've embraced it a lot. I think live streaming is really cool, but I think that it's not as cool if you don't get to talk to the audience during the show and connect with them. I think it's not as cool for them either. And I think it's not as cool when you don't know what your audio is like going into the stream. Like if someone is doing the audio for you and you don't get to vet that, where you just have to kind of trust them, go in blind faith. For me, like especially with this looping stuff, it's very particular, and I have a kind of a vision of how I want to hear that, the balance of the voices and just the overall sound. And I have to explain that to someone if I wanted them to engineer it. And like, that's part of why I made a live record as opposed to like just, live streaming in super high quality, because there's just so much that goes into that. There's so much detail. And like, if it doesn't translate properly, it's kind of like, it just looks bad on you. Mm-hmm. It always comes back to you. Like if you work with people who are, engineering or, doing a video or whatever it is, like usually the feedback doesn't, come to them. It's like, they're kind of, out of the picture, but then it's like, it's your responsibility. Like you take responsibility for all those technical things that might not have been up to par or, satisfying to the audience. So
I've written down separation of tones going into the stream.
Yeah.
Separation of tones going into the stream. It's deep. It's deep, Raphael. You were going to say, I'm sorry.
No. Well, I was going to say, like, that's something with live streaming for sure. When you've got like an acoustic instrument and an amp in the same space, how do you blend that? But what I found is that, I rely mostly on the cello mic actually to just capture the bleed of the amp. And then I get, just like a 57 on the amp to get a little bit more of the clarity of what's actually coming out of the cab. And then I just blend those. But I feel like, it's really that simple. It's like you're getting these two different types of sound to mesh together. But like the acoustic sound gives you the definition of the cello. Like it gives you the bow sound, right? But then the amp gives you this kind of wash, and it obviously is transmitting all of the effects, all the reverbs and delays, and particularly with the Worlds Within material, there's a lot of those. Mm-hmm. So that kind of gives you this expansiveness and wash that I think it just magnifies the cello. So it becomes this kind of like this super cello sound. It's going to be bigger. It's a bit larger than life, so to speak. And I like that. I think it's really cool. But it doesn't sound like it's unnatural. It just sounds bigger and more expansive.
I think you just defined why guitar players plug into an amp in the first place.
Yeah. Plus, also for a guitar, I mean, you don't really have sustain otherwise. You know what I mean? You need to be amplified to have sustain. Whereas with cello, we have a bow, so we can sustain regardless. But yeah.
All right, on this snotty podcast, here we go. And cello has a bow, everybody.
Knew that was going to come out eventually. Yeah.
Zeppelin took care of that, okay?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the thing, right? Every guitarist, like electric guitarist, wants more sustain. I think that's pretty normal.
Yeah, we've got the EBow.
Yeah, EBows are cool.
They are. Probably, well, maybe they're still used, and I just don't know about it, but I think of it as more of like a late 80s, early 90s sort of phenomenon.
Yeah, I mean, I associate it a lot with the album Blackwater Park by Opeth, actually, because you hear a lot of EBow with that like harmonic mode on. It's like very characteristic of that record in particular.
Yeah, they use it on the Black Album. If anybody can pick it out from Metallica.
Okay, which song is that they use it on?
They use it all over the place, but I believe they use it a lot on Unforgiven.
Right. Yeah. Now I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Especially in the beginning of the.
Yeah.
They also did use some synthesizers on there as well. I remember watching video of a dude on like an old Mac, one of the original Macs, and he was like MIDI programming stuff, and they were glaring at him. He may or may not have also been programming the drum samples, which I know nobody wants to admit that, but they used drum samples as well. But anyway, this is not about that. This is about you. And there were no drum samples on your record.
No, the drums were created on cello.
That's right.
The percussion sounds, that's a whole other thing. But that's something I tried to explore in depth, obviously. Well, in some depth on this record, and we got to do it all again with the live version and kind of approach it from a different angle, trying to get the cello drumming on the bridge pickup to sound convincing and good. But I've been doing it more and more, so I feel like I'm kind of getting a handle on how to play it well, and then it's just a question of getting the sounds to translate, the blend of all the different signals that we're capturing, that type of thing.
So I'm thinking of a classical guitar player who's using the guitar as a drum, which I don't. How does it work in terms of string instruments? Because from a recording perspective, a guitar is technically a percussion instrument. Because of the way it's designed, because of the same frequencies that you would pull out of or emphasize in a drum. Once a microphone is in front of it, it can sound very boxy the same way a drum would. And especially an acoustic guitar can be used like a tambourine or something to just, keep time or whatever. Electric guitar, not so much, but acoustic guitar, definitely. So it doesn't sound like a convincing drum, but he's tapping it in different places. Are you doing something similar to like how a classical guitar player might emphasize, or a flamenco guitar player might emphasize some rhythmic parts smacking the guitar in different places?
No, because what they're doing is something that would translate in a purely acoustic setting, because they're using the body of the instrument, and either they're muting the strings and doing this, various techniques, or they're playing on the actual body of the instrument and kind of hitting the body of the instrument. And that's something you can do on cello. You can get some really cool sounds that way. But what I'm doing is I'm actually just using the bridge, and it's because I have this pickup. I don't know of any other cello pickups that can do this, but I use one by a company called Shatton. It's a Canadian company, and I've been using their pickups for hells yeah. So I've been using their pickups since 2012 now, and they're great, and I recommend them to everybody. And it was just kind of very randomly at a gig one day. I was in sound check, and I was just kind of waiting, as you do sometimes when you're like line checking all the instruments. And I was just thumping the pickup with my finger, basically, It's like a transducer on the bridge, and then it was getting this kind of, especially out of the PA, you get this really low bassy sound. It sounds like a kick drum.
Yep.
And then I started kind of flicking the other side of the bridge with my fingernail, and then it sounds like a cross stick. So it's got this almost like a hip hop kind of sound. It's not like real drums. It's kind of more like electronic drums, and I dug that. So then later on, I got this delay pedal and I started playing with the delay pedal doing that. And of course you get all these ghost notes coming off of the main hits. And then I thought, okay, I can make some interesting grooves out of this. And at first it felt very like, okay, I don't know how I'd be able to integrate this into an actual piece of music. It's just too out there. But then one day, I started just doing this, and then turned into this very busy groove with a lot of like 16th note ghost notes. And that became the start of the Tumult piece that's on both records, obviously, that begins with these kind of galloping drums. So yeah.
Next thing you know, the white girls are dancing, and you're like, "Oh, this could make me some money."
Well, yeah, we'll see about that. This shit that I'm doing is so out there, but yeah, it's what's funny about it is that it sounds kind of like electronic dance music in a way, which is like pretty much the furthest away from the type of music that I listen to. But I think it's really fascinating that a lot of electronic music mimics classical music and acoustic instruments, but then it's trying to replace them in a way, but then it sounds different. But what I'm really interested in is the opposite, where you see classical music, new chamber music and that kind of stuff, going and imitating electronic music and sort of sounds that come more from like a modern era, but then they're being reinterpreted on older instruments. And that concept is really fascinating to me. And that's something that I explored a lot on Worlds Within, and also the track From Above. It's got like this very steady, just kind of quarter note, like thumping kick drum beat, it's very kind of disco in a way. But then around it, it's like you've got this kind of, it's like this Meshuggah-y sort of like polyrhythmic pattern that kind of loops around this very straight beat. So it was kind of trying to merge all those different worlds in something that would sound cohesive and just sound like its own thing, not like an amalgamation of all the things that have influenced it.
Yeah. Well, a lot of classical music was chamber music to dance to.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
definitely.
Yeah. Now you just got to take Armin van Buuren and Beethoven and make Armin van Beethoven.
Okay.
And you're good to go. A song that I'm dancing to, but I want to cry at the same time because it's so emotionally and captivating. Cool. All right, so we chatted about the album. We chatted about live streams. We chatted about how you're hooking up your cello these days. We chatted about how you were re-exploring the record. There's an interest in the record. Obviously, so that's why you did this. Gained a lot of momentum throughout the year with the record. I don't think we missed anything. Did we miss anything, Raphael?
I mean, that's basically the gist of it. Also, it's got super cool artwork that is very much related to the studio album artwork. So that's basically just an incentive to go and buy physical copies of it because they're nice and
spend money.
As much as spend money and have something that you can own, which is definitely worth it. So please do that.
Exactly. So in today's show notes, so if you're listening on Spotify, it'll be on the show notes. If you're on today's website, it'll be on the show notes. If you're on YouTube, it'll be in the show notes, as well as links to 3 music videos that I received from Liz over at Earsplit. So we've got Unending 1 and From Within 2, From Above, and Tumult, Uno, Dos, and Tres.
And there will be one more video coming in the future.
Okay.
Near future. Yeah.
Perfect. So by the time this airs, if that video is available, that will also be in today's show notes. So if you are spending some time today with the Rock Metal Podcast, and thank you, and spend some more time with some Raphael, and get some soup as well, maybe. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, listen back to the beginning of the episode and get your mentality checked because you have a short attention span. Anyway, thank you so much for coming on to this show.
All right. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Great to chat again.